Professor Zethkalar had been teaching mythological species and galactic folklore at the University of Nexus Prime for 47 standard years, and he had never encountered a more captivated audience. His morning lecture hall was packed beyond capacity, with students from 12 different species hanging on his every word as he gestured dramatically toward the holographic display. And so we come to perhaps the most fascinating example of mythological evolution in galactic culture. He announced, his crystalline form catching the morning light, filtering through the university's bioluminescent panels. The legend of the humans or Deathworlders, a supposedly real species that dominated galactic discourse for nearly 3 years before being revealed as elaborate fiction. A young Sikari student raised her primary manipulator. Professor, weren't there documented interactions with this human species? Military records, diplomatic transcripts? Professor Zethkalar's harmonic laughter filled the auditorium. Ah, young Clithsay, you demonstrate exactly why this case study is so valuable. Yes, there are indeed thousands of fabricated documents, convincingly detailed holovids, even supposed artifacts of human technology. The perpetrators of this hoax were remarkably thorough. He gestured to the holographic display, which showed what appeared to be a bipedal creature with remarkably unremarkable features. Observe the supposed human physiology. 2 arms, 2 legs, minimal natural armor, no claws, no venom, no natural weapons whatsoever. Yet the mythology claims these creatures could tear reinforced metal with their bare hands, survive direct neural disruptor hits, and defeat entire fleets through sheer tactical brilliance. The class erupted in amused, chittering, harmonic chuckling and bioluminescent patterns of mirth. It was indeed absurd when presented that way. The mythology becomes even more preposterous, Zethkalar continued, warming to his favorite topic when we examine the supposed achievements of these fictional beings. They allegedly convinced reality itself to bend to their engineering will, built megastructures around dying stars, and traumatized the entire Galactic Council into restructuring interspecies diplomacy. A Crorian student waved 2 of his 4 arms. Professor, what about the Kepler 438 incident? The stellar compression array is still operational. Excellent question, Vorthak. The stellar array is indeed real, built by a coalition of the galaxy's finest engineers, working in unprecedented cooperation. The human myth was created after the fact to explain how such an impossible project could have been completed so quickly. Rather than admit that our understanding of physics was incomplete, it became psychologically easier to attribute the achievement to a fictional species of impossible capabilities. Professor Zethkalar was hitting his stride now, his voice resonating with the confidence of decades of academic authority. Consider the logical impossibilities, a species that supposedly evolved on a Class XII Deathworld, a planet so hostile that it should preclude the development of intelligence. Yet these mythical humans allegedly thrived in such conditions, while simultaneously developing technology advanced enough to challenge civilizations millions of years older. The lecture hall's main entrance suddenly activated with a soft chime, interrupting the professor's flow. He glanced irritably toward the disturbant students arriving late to his lectures, was a pet peeve, and froze. 3 individuals had entered the hall, and they matched the holographic display with disturbing precision. Bipedal, symmetrical, possessing the unremarkable features that had been described in the mythological accounts. They were dressed in what appeared to be standard galactic civilian clothing, but there was something about their presence that made the air itself seem heavier. "Sorry we're late, Professor," said the apparent leader, a female with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Traffic was murder getting through the Nexus rings. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Terran Cultural Exchange Program. These are my colleagues, Dr. Martinez and Commander Okafor." The silence in the lecture hall was absolute. Professor Zethkalar's crystalline form had stopped refracting light entirely, a physiological response to extreme psychological shock. Dr. Chen looked around the hall with interest, then up at the holographic display showing her own species. "Oh, neat. You're covering humans in your mythology class. We actually get that a lot lately. Mind if we sit in?" We promised not to be disruptive. A flux student in the front row had begun the process of emergency liquefaction his species, equivalent of fainting. Several Sekthari were making rapid calculations on their personal data devices, apparently trying to determine the statistical probability of a mass hallucination. You can't be," Professor Zethkalar finally managed. "Real?" Dr. Martinez smiled, and there was something deeply unsettling about the expression. "Yeah, we get that reaction a lot. Turns out, reports of our fictional nature have been greatly exaggerated." Commander Okafor was examining the holographic display with professional interest. "This is actually pretty accurate, Professor. Though you might want to update your threat assessment data. We've made some improvements since the Zephyrian incident." "The Zephyrian incident was real?" squeaked a young academician from the upper tier. "Oh, very real," Dr. Chen confirmed cheerfully. "Though to be fair, they started it. We just finished it. Rather thoroughly, as I recall." Professor Zethkalar's entire worldview was crumbling with the structural integrity of a house of cards in a hurricane. 47 years of academic certainty, peer-reviewed papers, and scholarly conferences were dissolving into intellectual chaos. But the logical impossibilities, he protested weakly. The physics violations, the evolutionary contradictions. "Physics is more of a guideline than a rule," Dr. Martinez replied casually. "Evolution is just what happens when a species refuses to go extinct. And as for logical impossibilities," she shrugged, "logic is overrated." Dr. Chen had pulled out what appeared to be a standard datapad and was taking notes. "This is fascinating, actually. We're studying how our mythology spread through galactic culture after our diplomatic isolation period. Would you mind if we recorded the rest of your lecture? For academic purposes, of course." Your diplomatic isolation period? Oh, right. You wouldn't have gotten the updates. We've been in voluntary isolation for the past 8 months, working on some internal restructuring. We're just now beginning to re-engage with galactic society." Commander Okafor's smile was perfectly pleasant and absolutely terrifying. Imagine our surprise when we discovered we'd become mythological. The rest of the lecture proceeded in a surreal atmosphere of academic meltdown. Professor Zethkalar attempted to continue his prepared material, while 3 impossibly real mythological beings sat in his front row, occasionally offering corrections to his fictional accounts of their activities. By the end of the class period, 17 students had requested immediate transfers to different courses. Professor Zethkalar had submitted his resignation, and the University of Nexus Prime had quietly begun updating their curriculum to include applied human studies as a mandatory course for all species. The short video of Dr. Chen's pleasant wave goodbye as she left the lecture hall would become the most watched academic recording in galactic history, primarily because it represented the moment when mythology walked out of legend and back into reality. Professor Zethkalar would spend the rest of his career studying a single question: if humans were real, what else had the galaxy dismissed as impossible?